What's going on? Today is Monday, and as you guys know, every single Monday we come at you, we spit fire, we spit the truth and nothing but the
truth.
So today we're going to lie about Eric's personality. Today we're going to talk about how sometimes you nitpicking on your leader or your leaders is going to fuck you up and hold you back from creating success.
My favorite subject.
So we're going to, listen, today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the weaknesses that Eric has and some of the weaknesses that Michael Barayev has. And we're going to talk about that and how we have ended up complementing each other and still creating massive success with building teams and building a business together. Because at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you guys, me and Eric are completely different people. As you guys can tell, I'm extreme. He's a little more looser. I'm a little bit higher energy. He's a little bit lower energy. Okay, I'm a little bit fucking fanatical. He's a little more realist, right? So we have our differences, and somehow, some way, through the the years. How many years we know each other? We know each other for like 6-7 years, but we've been working together for about 5-6 years actually. Wow, it's gonna be a 6th year. We're working together. Somehow, some way, we made it. And there's been times where I was like, "Damn, I want to choke this guy," and there's been a lot of times where he said, "Damn, I want to run away from this guy," and somehow, some way, we ended up making it work, and it ended up, helping a lot of people around us. Because there's been a lot of times where I had guys in our team that were like, I don't want to do business with you because of Eric, or I don't want to do business with you because of me, right? And we had those kind of situations where we were able to, save our teams and save our people because our personalities were able to kind of, complete each other versus compete with each other. And sometimes, looking for the right business partner is not easy. Looking for the right hand man, left hand man is not easy, but somehow, some way we made it. So we're going to talk about some of the negatives that we had, but we're also going to talk about some of the positive things that you had because that's what helps us complete each other and still make it happen. So let's talk about some of the challenges that I have had, and you can be very open on some of the things that, kind of negate. Like, I'll give you guys an example. One of the craziest things that God has done for me. I mean, I don't question God's, God's plans, but somehow, some way, he's like, let's take the guy who never read the book, Think and Grow Rich. Let's take the guy who never read the book, forget about Think and Grow Rich, but what's that book called? Hold on a second. Yeah. Somehow, some way, God's like, listen, let's find the guy who never read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and pick the guy who read the book, How to Tick People Off and Make People Hate Them. Okay, and take that individual, a.k.a. Michael Barayev, and put him into an industry that is heavily dependent on building relationships, right? And building teams and building people and being a leader. Like, I was the last guy that was supposed to make it. Somehow, some way, we're here today. Still freaking pushing, still shoving, still making moves. So how did that even happen? Okay, I don't know, but God had a sense of humor. He took the guy like myself and put me in this situation, and somehow we made it. And I think the biggest blessing that I had was being surrounded by people that are way better than me in the areas that I sucked at. And here's some of the, and you can even say, like, what are some of the areas that I really, really, I wouldn't say I suck today, but maybe sucked in the past, maybe I'm growing in some of those areas, but that were really, really challenging that has maybe even made you question, like, whether or not you want to even be around me sometimes. Like, what were some of those things?
Yeah, all day.
I love it.
No, I mean, listen, I think we should, it'd only be fair to say we all have weaknesses. We all have things that we need to work on and things that we're not as good at. I think being in a business that is heavily dependent on relationships and human interaction, sometimes it's tough with, some of the personality differences that we share. We've made it work. And like I said, and like you said, I should say, sometimes we've kind of wanted to run away from each other. And I'll be honest, with you and the public, you irk me sometimes, bro. And then, I think a lot of people can feel the same way. And that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean that you have bad values or that, that you're doing the wrong things or making bad decisions. I think it's just part of maybe who you are, or at least who you were in the past. I know you've made some, some big changes over the years. But I think just because we're so different, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily laid back. I've become way more laid back as I've gotten older. For those that don't know, I'm be 40 this coming year.
Oh boy,
feels like it flew by. But just your extreme personality. I had this conversation with you earlier. I know we disagreed slightly, but I do think there's moments where you can come off very arrogant, sometimes narcissistic. And for most people, that could be a turnoff.
Doesn't. By the way, I've been clinically, not what's it clinical? I've been what do they say? This
clinically
proven that I'm not a narcissist.
Well, there's no.
Well, no proof.
I don't think there's anything.
But I had specialists and doctors say that I am not a narcissist. Okay, because they say that in order to be a narcissist, you have to have a lack of empathy, which is like zero empathy and zero care for anyone around you at all. And number two, a willingness to not want to change and grow. So, and I know you guys are laughing at this shit right now because this is fucking funny.
Listen,
but,
I'm not a clinical psychologist or a
Yee!
psychiatrist, even though I did go to school for psychology. So I'm not here to diagnose anyone. What I'm saying is there's tendencies or the feeling that I get sometimes.
But that's
you
the
know,
thing
comes
with
off-
Google, bro. But that's the, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's the way I feel sometimes, and I think other people can, feel that too.
And-
That ego behind, who you are, and you can say it's confidence, you can say it's just your belief in yourself, but I do think, that when you have that heavy ego or that arrogance, I think that is,
I would change
one
the,
of the things that has hurt my ability to really connect with you on those deeper levels.
and one of the things I want to change, instead of saying arrogance, I would say aggressive more. I wouldn't say arrogance
Well, I
because
think that's another thing. I think there's arrogance. and
arrogant. Oh, well,
aggressive.
I look at it this way.
'Cause-
This is one of the things I look at. I have been in my childhood has made me into this tough ball, right? This rock, so to say. And like I was telling you earlier, many people are not saying, "Wow, I want Michael to be successful." Like I don't have people rooting for me. As a matter of fact, I have people like kind of like rooting for my fall a lot of times, right? Which may be my fault, maybe what it is. But I've learned to root for myself and not depend on other people to root for me. So I have to take this massive amounts of pressure, massive amounts of push, massive amounts of shove to get what I want. Like I have to put a lot of energy into it. And somehow, some way, I read a book by I forget the name of the book, but it was something with hypomania and how like the most successful people in the world, like you look at all these billionaires, all these different people, have this thing called hypomania, where they have this massive amounts of energy, this big vision, grandiose ideas, all these different things, and that's what drives them. And a lot of times, people like us are misunderstood. I know for a fact that if you sat down with me, really got to know me, really got to know my heart, my true heart, it would be very hard to judge me in those areas. But a lot of times, people misunderstand me a little bit. Would you agree?
Well, that may be true. I'm also a believer that perception sometimes is reality.
Can
I
be.
think,
It can be.
you may have philosophies and ideologies that people, think you feel differently about, but you're like in your mind and in your heart, you're like, no, that's not true. But if their perception is that it is true, then sometimes that's just as powerful.
I agree. I agree. I mean, and what you make people feel is just as important as the actual truth, right? So, I get that. So, that's the thing. That's the ironic. That's a dichotomy that I've always been through. Is like me being in the relationship business has not been the best thing, so to say, and that's why I've suffered so much and struggled so much by pushing so much to get to high levels of success. I think I would have made 10 times the money if I chose a different path. Like if I was the CEO of some other kind of business or maybe a different type of industry, I think I would have made it much faster, much quicker because the amount of energy I exerted is a lot, and it is a lot. But somehow, some way, God had this sense of humor to say, hey, let's put Michael Barayev into this business where you have to deal with people and learn about yourself. And I've made a lot of improvements, I think, and a lot of changes, but there's certain things that you just can never change because that's who you are as an individual. And what I have learned is that is what makes me me, And I understand that maybe people have different opinions, different ideas, different ideologies. And like I said, for me to even talk about this in the open and publicly, it doesn't bother me because I know these are things that people either see on the outside or once they get to know me, they'll see it. But I'm okay with it. Because I understand that I'm a very driven, ambitious, focused individual, and I have a lot of other amazing qualities, which we'll get to in a second, that kind of trump all those smaller, challenging things that people go through. Because if that was such a case, you would have left a long time ago. Something still kept you around me, and that's why people that know me still keep them around them, not because of anything I give to them, but there's other qualities that have made me, or showed you that, hey, being around Michael's not as bad as X, Y, and Z, right? And just like you have some bad qualities as well. Like there's things that I could say about you, for example, that, I don't know. There's a lot of things we can all say about negative, but what would you say is one thing? Let's hear. What would you say is one thing that's so negative compared to my negative as an example? What would you say is as comparative? What would you say about yourself?
Well, let me just start by saying this. Let me add a few more
Oh, yeah.
negatives
Go
onto
ahead.
your list. No, I want to say something that I feel like was a big negative, but I feel like you've gotten much better at, which is your anger. I think that your anger and your ability to manage your emotions was, not very good to say the least.
I agree.
When I first met you, so the fact that you've gotten better at that, I think you still have your moments, but again, that's fine. But, that's something that was kind of scary at first, and I think if anyone were to see some of the outbursts, like you had when I first met you, that could have been a very big turning point, especially on a professional level. Now, that doesn't make you a bad person. I know, you've probably talked about, maybe for that anger, but, to your credit, that's something that you've gotten better at. When it comes to myself, I would say, one of the things, I don't know if it's necessarily, well, I would claim it to be a bad thing. It's just my organization is pretty horrible.
Horrible.
Yeah, pretty horrible. If you hand me something, it's probably gone.
Yeah, but people can live with that. What are some things? What are some things that are negative about you that affect other people? You would say, because organization affects.
I haven't been a very good friend a lot in the last 5-10 years. I've been very unreliable for most people. Even my good friends from home, who really, I'm not saying you don't care about me, but I'm just saying as an example, those were like family. Like, I have probably 10, 15, 20. Probably somewhere between 20 to 30 people that were like my best friends growing up. And I wouldn't say I abandoned them, but as I got older, I just
abandoned them. It's because you know what it is, and I feel like you became into your own bubble.
I became a recluse, a little bit of a hermit, and I have, internal guilt for that. I think, guilt is one of my most unsettling emotions that I feel. And it's easy enough to just pick up a phone and call them and kind of fix a lot of those things. But it's hard for me to be consistent in it. So, I've definitely, I don't know if a lot of my friends are watching, from back home or anything, probably Reed, but.
Boy, Reed.
But, I know for a fact, like, I've just not been a good friend. A lot of people have needed me. They've had situations in their life. They've lost their mom. They've lost their dad. I'm not saying, I completely, haven't been involved in anything, but I know for the most part, I've not been there when I should have been.
But you know what's crazy? My negatives and your negatives, we just went through a few of them. Just how different are we? Because your negatives are like my biggest positives, and my negatives are your biggest positives.
Which is kind of, it's kind of a contrast to who I am as a person, though.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want part 2 or part 3, do me a favor. Click on the next video and do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. We love you so much for showing us love and support, and we'll see you guys in the
next one.
Appreciate you.